"May I first say that I'm impressed?" began Zemera, enthusiastically guiding me by hand through the pristine halls of her spherical ship and past a handful of other Iragon as the two of us made our way deeper into the craft. "Really, I am. 92.36% of uncontacted alien species never even make it off their home planet. Yours will be the first we've encountered to have traveled between solar systems." I elected to remain silent. Any information I gave this alien regarding humanity could be used against them further down the line, and I wasn't about to allow my own mouth to escape me and betray my entire species. Without so much as a word, I allowed the Iragon woman to guide me into a small white room which, judging by the heavily mechanized surgery table, was some form of medical bay. "What is your name, alien?" she asked me, her voice soft and almost parental, as she knelt down to eye level and caressed the side of my face. Pausing for a moment to contemplate whether this was some sort of trick, eventually I resolved to surrender this harmless scrap of information. "Andrew," I confessed, my eyes drifting reflexively toward the sharp instruments positioned at the ends of robotic arms overtop the Iragon surgery table. "It is nice to meet you, Andrew." She hummed gently, clasping my free hand within her own. "I get the feeling our species will be great friends someday." Buried deeply amongst the rich tones of her melodic voice was a small lilt of sadness, the meaning of which I could not trace. "What's your game?" I sighed, sensing no purpose in the further indulgence of Zemera's ruse. Ultimately, stood here within her domain, I was far beyond the point of no return. There was little use for ruses beyond here. Seemingly surprised by my question, Zemera regarded me with an almost distraught expression. "Why does everyone always ask that?" she pondered aloud, approaching a holographic screen beside the medical bed and tapping away at various buttons. "Truly, all I want is to help you." "Like you helped Ulmarans?" I growled, doing my best to command some semblance of authority before this creature whose presence stole away every available mote of it. For the briefest flicker of a moment, Zemera's mask of perky platitudes slipped away to reveal beneath it a look of concern. "How much do you think you know about that?" she whispered, her lean yet powerful muscles tensing up as she awaited my answer. "I know your kind wiped them out. You used a bioengineered bacteria to target the Ulmaran's lungs." "I'm sorry," sighed the Iragon, turning her attention away from the holographic screen and back toward me before stepping forth to once again clasp my hand within her own. "But if I'm to tell you more about that, I would much rather do so in my own native tongue," she continued, her soft gaze shifting toward the surgical bed. "Just lay down on the table and we'll install your translation implant, okay?" "Why the hell should I trust you?" I spat, attempting at first without avail to pull myself free from Zemera's startlingly insurmountable grasp. Needless to say, I didn't like the idea of being forced to undergo surgery by a race of genocidal tyrants. Despite my failure to free myself by force, however, the Iragon quickly released me of her own volition. "I assure you the implantation process is completely safe and painless," she cooed, her voice the sort of comforting whisper one might use on a child. "You'll only be out for a segment or two, and when you wake up, I'll answer any question you want. Is that all right, Andrew?" Unfortunately, my options here weren't exactly expansive. If I refused, all I would be accomplishing is pissing her off. It wasn't like this Iragon couldn't simply force me into surgery if it was so important to her. And so, surrendering myself onto the operating table with a sigh of resignation, I watched as Zemera once again approached its companion console and typed in a command. Above my eyes, a sleek metal disc drifted into view, and upon its bottom face, I was greeted by a ring of twinkling blue lights rotating in almost hypnotic motion. "Just focus on the lights, will you?" Zemera requested, her powerful hands drifting onto my shoulders and gently kneading them as I continued obeying her frankly redundant command. So focused had I been on the blue lights and the feeling of my shoulders being massaged that I hardly even noticed the subtle prick of an anesthetic needle entering my neck. Only a few times throughout my life had I been under anesthesia, but each time it was done to me, the resulting sleep was always silent and brief. The same, however, could not be said for this particular procedure. Indeed, never before have I had clearer dreams. "My people." The words echoed within my mind like an eager young librarian sifting through bookshelves in search of the correct tome. Vivid phantasms of my species played out behind my eyelids. I saw my family, my friends, both now long gone. I remembered the last thing that was said to me before I was put into cryosleep. Humanity thanks you, Mr. Malix. Humanity. A complicated people. Images of the best and the worst of us flashed through my mind like a slideshow on stimulants. Overlaying these pictures, I could hear the dialogue spoken between world leaders at the last UN summit before my launch. We have greater concerns than exploring space, one of the chancellors lambasted our president. Our home planet needs our attention far more than some star system light years away. Home planet, Earth was a beautiful place. The blue marble, humanity's cradle. Before my final send-off into the stars, I submitted a request to NASA that I be taken into orbit one last time on a commercial vessel. I would never forget my last glimpse of the Sol system's crown jewel. Beyond anything, I hoped humanity was still there, taking care of our ancestral home. Sure, Mars, following our little renovations, was nice, but there was no other planet in the whole of the universe I longed to see again one day than Earth. Sol system. Orbiting the Class G star, Sol, our home star system had 8 planets, 4 terrestrial and 4 gas giants. By the time I left, it had been the only star system harboring human life. Now, however, it seemed that such a prestigious honor belonged also to the Alpha Centauri system. Alpha Centauri. A trinary system containing stars of Class G, K, and M. Apparently, humanity now had a colony there, specifically surrounding the red dwarf Proxima Centauri. Important as my mission in TRAPPIST was, I wished I could have seen it established. My mission: document and observe the TRAPPIST system. A star system with 3 potentially habitable planets. TRAPPIST would, if nothing else, provide invaluable data in our search for life outside of Earth. Life beyond Earth. Ever since we first looked to the stars, one great question has lingered in the back of our minds. Are we alone? It was question pondered by the most brilliant of minds for centuries. Mars held beneath its surface some evidence of complex life, but nothing so conclusive as the Kafel. Nevertheless, the concepts of alien life and civilization spawned countless pieces of media, from humanity joining galactic unions to fending off alien invaders. Few other topics so effectively captured mankind's collective imagination. Humanity's defenses. Perhaps the most unrealistic part of science fiction media was the notion that in a battle for our planet, we'd stand half a chance. Hopefully, we've made some serious leaps in that field since my departure. Otherwise, mankind was in more danger than it could possibly know. Finally, awakening to a subtle ringing in my ears, I watched as from the console Zimera approached me and again knelt down to look me in the eye. You may experience some minor translation lag while your brain adjusts to the implant, she began, her smooth alien language awkwardly transcribing its meaning into my brain. Apologies also for those strange dreams you had. I've had worse nightmares. Wait, how'd you know about those? I demanded, reflexively leaping to my feet, only to find myself buckling beneath my own weight and careening toward the ground. Closing my eyes, I braced for the feeling of my face impacting the cold metal floor, only to find myself instead cradled within Zimera's arms, their metallic surface warm like playground equipment after a tame spring afternoon. Like I said, I'm sorry about those, she repeated, her 5-fingered hand gently brushing back my hair left to grow out from my extended stay with the Kafel. Neurosearch tech is still in its infancy, and its creators have yet to do away with that side effect. Neurosearch. What's that? I asked, feeling the pressure return to my soles as the Irrigan gently eased me back down onto my feet. It's a new technology that essentially allows us to trigger neural pathways within unconscious subjects according to an input stimulus like words or an image, Zimera explained, her tone assuming a degree of excitement upon the mention of this technology. In essence, I just used your brain as a search engine. The words struck me like a bolt of lightning, threatening to once again knock my legs out from under me as I tried my best not to once again pass out. How much do you know? I barked at her, barely managing to contain my anger to mere words upon this egregious breach of privacy. It's okay. The Irrigan hummed gently, sitting down upon the medical bed and patting the spot beside her as though inviting me to do the same. I only wanted to learn more about humanity. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. How much do you know? I repeated, my fists clenching of their own volition as I stepped forth to place my own eyes mere inches from Zemera's own. It was strange to be speaking in English again after so long brute-forcing my way through Zintrish, like coming home after a long stretch of absence, a small comfort compared to the immense fury bubbling up within me. I know your kind possess endurance far beyond that of any species in our union, Zimera began, her lips pursed in a tight smile. Frankly, the ingenuity of nature never ceases to amaze me. Humans essentially have their own liquid cooling system. I'm almost jealous, she quipped, utterly unbothered by my clear displays of aggression. I know your home star is a Class G yellow dwarf approximately 4 light-years away from a trinary system with stars of classes G, K, and M. With that knowledge, it shouldn't be too difficult to locate. Plopping myself down alongside this Irigan with an angry grunt, I glared at her. My efforts to convey displeasure, however, were met with naught but a giggle. I apologize, Zimera began, her arm wrapping around my shoulder and pulling me in close. Apparently, personal space was one of the few things this species did not understand. I don't mean to offend you, Andrew. It's just that by Irigan standards, your kind are quite, well, adorable, but I digress. She sighed, once again releasing me from her startlingly powerful grip. I promised I would answer any of your questions, didn't I? Go right ahead, human. Ask me anything. Taking a few deep breaths to calm myself down, I pondered for a long while how best to phrase my first query. In the end, however, there was no way to soften it. You wiped out the Ulmarans, I began, my tone's white-hot fury long since cooled down into cold dispassion. Why? Dealing so harshly with the Sinal people was not a decision my predecessor took lightly. Zimera sighed, her expression falling into one of seemingly genuine remorse. Following a period of great turmoil reminiscent of humanity's Cold War, democracy on Ulmara was all but dead. Authoritarian leaders with nuclear weapons sufficient to destroy their entire planet were on the verge of doing just that. When we first appeared before the Sinal leaders and requested they cease their abuses of power, our arrival was met with threats of violence, not only by those leaders, but by the very people we sought to protect. Most of their civilians had been so deceived with propaganda by that point that they actually liked their oppressors, the very ones who enslaved innocents for their own pleasure and executed even children who dared speak out against them. Zimera's voice wavered with fury as she spoke, her eyes darkening as she recounted the various atrocities of the Ulmaran leaders. And you're telling me nobody was resisting them? I interrupted, my bullshit senses tingling upon the notion. Not at all, Zimera continued, shaking her head side to side in a gesture presumably borrowed from her time poking about within my mind. There was a global resistance group, but their efforts were floundering. My predecessor tracked them down and made the Sinal leaders an offer. We would take the resistance with us, getting rid of the troublemakers for good in their eyes, and in return they would sign a contract with us guaranteeing certain rights for those who remained. The Sinal leaders rejected this proposal. Instead, they demanded we turn over the names of every resistance member so they could be punished. When we in turn refused this obscene notion, they threatened to come to the stars for vengeance should we attempt to help their victims escape justice. Ultimately, our algorithms determined that if we did not intervene harshly, there was an 86% chance that the Sinal race would be extinct within a century. Failing that, there was a 94% chance that the Sinal would eventually fall under one dictatorial rule and begin prowling the stars. From there, it was a simple matter of maintaining the safety of our people. Again, I could hardly believe what I was hearing. So you just killed them all? I growled, again doing my best to resist the temptation of taking a swing at this Irigan. Our computers calculated with 93.46% certainty that any attempts to liberate the planet would result at best in a drawn-out guerrilla war, and at worst in total nuclear annihilation. Many of the Sinal leaders outright stated that they'd burn their own planet to the ground before conceding power to us. In the end, we were faced with the heart-wrenching choice to either save someone or save no one. We chose the former. Listen, Andrew, Zimera continued, sounding as though on the verge of tears. If it had been my choice, you have my word, I would have tried harder to save everyone. But at the end of the day, Toville had to make the decision. I can hardly place him at fault. Of all the features for convergent evolution to select between humans and Irrigan, crying was not one that I would have expected. Nevertheless, here I was, watching her wipe away the drops of saline dripping down her cheeks. "Sorry, I need a moment," Zemera blurted, quickly standing up and approaching a nondescript door on the other side of the medbay. "I'll have my assistant take you to your room. We can talk there later." And with that, Zemera stepped out, leaving me alone to contemplate what she had just told me.